Good day, everyone. So, today I will discuss to you a literary analysis about The Grapes of Wrath by Jan Stenbeck. So, these are the contents for the analysis for us to be guided. So, first we have background of the work, author's background, character web, characterization, plot, then we have styles of the author. Under of that are conflict, flashback, foreshadowing. Then we have themes, cultural implication, and implication of the title. Okay, so background of the work. So, The Grapes of Wrath, the best known novel by John Steinbeck, published in 1939, it evokes the harshness of the Great Depression and arouses sympathy for the struggles of migrant farm workers. The book came to be regarded as an American classic, the top-selling novel of 1939, and it won the Pulitzer Prize and the American Booksellers Award, merits which supported Steinbeck's election to membership in the National Institute of Arts and Letters. So, Steinbeck's purpose contrived with the novel's tone was to inform the public of the migrants' plight, meaning their hardships and difficulties and also sorrows experienced during those times. John Steinbeck's classic novel, The Grapes of Wrath, was intended to personalize the injustice dealt to many migrants during the Great Depression. Steinbeck succeeded in raising awareness, which became the impetus for political activist movements. So, he wrote this novel in order to show the poor working and living condition of California's migrants workers during 1930s. Next is the author's background. So, John Steinbeck was born in Salinas, California on February 27, 1902. He attended Stanford University without graduating, and though he lived briefly in New York, he remained a lifelong Californian. Steinbeck began writing novels in 1929, but he garnered little commercial or critical success until the publication of Tortilla Flat in 1935. Steinbeck frequently uses fiction to delve into the lives of society's most downtrodden citizens. So, he describes the subsequent exploitation by a ruthless system of agricultural economic. That was his purpose. So next is the character web. So I have heard the legend. So the ship's heart represents the couple. So the couple here are Grandma Jude and Grandpa Jude. Then Ma Jude and Pa Jude. Then the shaped arrow, colored yellow, represents brotherhood. So Pa Jude and Uncle John are brother. Then the star shapes represent siblings, Jude's siblings. So there are 7 siblings. First, Noah, Tom, Rose, Sharon, Al, Rothy, and Winfield. So the brown star there represents the protagonist, in which he is Tom, the second son of Jude's family. Next is the characterization. So, Tom Jude, the novel's main character and second Jude's son. As the novel opens, he is returning to his family after his parole from the McAllister State Penitentiary. Among the novel's characters, Tom shows the most growth in his realization of the concept of human unity and love. So, in this novel, we're going to witness how Tom Judd completed his change from caring himself. He transitioned caring to his own family and, of course, to all migrants workers. He did everything just to help them. Next is Ma Jude. So Ma Jude is a wife and of course she's a mother. Ma is the backbone of the Jude family, strong-minded and resolute. Her main concern is that the family unite, not be broken. She is the physical embodiment of Steinbeck's theory of love. So Ma Jude, um, she tries everything just to hold her family, no matter what happened. Next is Pa Jude. Pa Jude is a patriarch of the Jude clan. Pa is a sharecropper, meaning he is the tenant of his um, farm, whose land has just been foreclosed on by the bank. So, somewhat lost and weakened, he leads his family to California in search for work. For what happens, because Pajud is evicted by his own land, so somewhat lost and awakened, so he leads his family to California in search for work. Next is Rose of Sharon. So Rose of Sharon, eldest Jude daughter. Rose of Sharon is pregnant and married to 19-year-old Connie Rivers. Self-absorbed by her pregnancy, she has many plans and dreams to their life in California. At the novel's close, she represents life-giving force. So even if Rose of Sharon is pregnant, but still she has many plans and dreams for their life in California. Next is Noah Jude, the oldest Jude son. Noah is slowly moving and emotionally distant, perhaps the result of an unintentional injury caused by Fad during Noah's birth. So, Noah Jude, um, there is an unintentional injury during his birth. Next is Grandma Jude. So, Grandma is deeply religious and energetic, unable to adapt the new way of life, and she dies as the family crosses the Mojave Desert. Then, Grandpa Jude. Grandpa Jude is a rowdy and vigorous. He refuses to leave the family's farm in Oklahoma. He dies on the first night of the trip. Next, Al Jude. Al Judd is a 16-year-old Judd's son. Al willingly admits that only cars and girls interest him. He is responsible for the maintenance of the family's truck during the journey to California. Next, the Ruthie Jude and Winfield. Ruthie Jude, the youngest Jude daughter. Ruthie is 12 years old and caught between childishness and adolescence. Then, while Winfield is a rough and tumble typical boy at the age of 10. Then, Molly Graves. So, one of the Jude's Oklahoma neighbors. When the bank evicts his family, Molly refuses to leave his land. Instead, he lets his wife and children move to California without him and stays behind to live outdoors when he comes upon Tom and the abandoned Jude farm. He directs the young man to his uncle John's. Then, Jim Cassie. Jim Cassie is former preacher and longtime friend of Jude's, the most important character of the novel. However, it is surprising that he, as one of the most important characters in The Grapes of Wrath, along with Tom and other members of the Judd family, he disappears still in about one-third part of the novel. So, just like Grandma and Grandpa, Jim Cassie disappears in the story. So, now is the plot. First, the Jude's family of tenant farmers in Oklahoma are forced off their farm by the debt incurred during the Dust Bowl year, released from an Oklahoma state prison after serving for years for a manslaughter conviction. Tom Jude makes his way back to his family's farm in Oklahoma. He meets Jim Cassie, a former preacher who has given up his calling out of a belief that all life is holy, even the parts that are typically thought to be sinful, and that sacredness consists simply in endeavoring to be unequal among the people. So Jim accompanies Tom to his home only to find it and all the surrounding farms deserted. So we meet Tom Judd, who's hitchhiking his way back to his family from prison. Along the way, Tom comes across ex-Reverend um, Jim Cassie. Next is Molly Graves. So, Molly Graves, an old neighbor, wanders by and tells the men that everyone has been structured off the land. Most families, he says, including his own, have headed to California to look for work, and then the next morning, Tom and Jim set out for Tom's Uncle John's, where Molly Graves assures them they will find the Judd clan. Upon arrival, Tom finds Ma and Pa Judd packing up the family few possessions, having seen handbills advertising fruit picking jobs in California. They envision the trip to California as their only hope of getting their lives back on track. So, Tom and Cassie meet Molly Graves, who tells them that the landowners have forced Tom's family off the farm, and they're now all at Uncle Jude's house. California. So once reunited, the entire Judd clan decides to head out to California in search of work. The journey to California in a precarious track is long and arduous, meaning difficult. So once reunited, so the entire Judd clan decided to head out to California in search of work. Next, the journey to California in a rickety-used truck is long and arduous. Grandpa Judd was the old man who complains bitterly that he does not want to leave his land, and he dies on the road shortly after the family's departure. So, on the drive, Grandpa gets sick and is cared for Wilson family. Camping. Later on, Grandpa dies, and the two families, the Judd family and Wilson family, decide to have a caravan together. Next, the dilapidated cars and trucks loaded down with scrappy possessions clog Highway 66. It seems the entire country is in fight to the promised land of California. The Judds meet Ivy and Sarah Wilson, a couple plagued with car trouble, and invite them to travel with the family. Sarah Wilson is sick and near the California border becomes unable to continue the journey. So along their travel, the car breaks down and the family splits up. So Tom and Al stay to fix the car while the rest of the family walk to a campsite that charges by day. Next. So as the Judds near California, they hear ominous rumors of a depleted job market. One migrant tells Pa that 20,000 people show up for every 800 jobs and that his own children have starved to death. Although the Judds press on, their first days in California prove tragic. As Grandma Judd dies, the remaining family members move from one skilled camp to the next, looking in vain for work, struggling to find food, and trying desperately to hold their family together. Noah, the oldest of the Judd children, soon abandons the family, as does Connie, a young dreamer who's married to Tom's pregnant sister, Rose of Sharon. So, Grandma dies and Ma keeps it a secret until the family has crossed into California where they leave Grandma at the Bakersfield coroner's office. Next, the Judds meet with such hostility in California. The camps are overcrowded and full of starving migrants who are often nasty to each other. So the locals are fearful and angry at the flood of newcomers, whom they derisively label. Work is almost impossible to find or pay, such as a meager wage that a family's full day's work cannot buy a decent meal. Fearing an uprising, the large landowners do everything in their power to keep the migrants poor and dependent, while staying in a ramshackle camp known as a hoverbell. So the Judds find a depressing camp called hoverbell. So talking to others, they learn about corruption. So the landowners and the poor treatment of workers. So after that, it caused fight with a contractor and the end, Cassie up going to jail. Next, a government-run camp proves much more hospitable to the Judds, and the family soon finds many friends and a bit of work. However, one day while working at a pipe-laying job, Tom learns that the police are planning to stage a riot in the camp, which will allow them to shut down the facilities. By alerting and organizing the men in the camp, Tom helps to defuse the danger. Still, as pleasant as life in the government camp is, the Judds cannot survive without steady work, and they have to move on. The family moves and picks peaches at a farm that is being picketed. So Tom finds Cassie in that tent. And is attacked. So Jim Cassie is attacked by the authorities. So Cassie dies, and then Tom kills the attacker with a pickaxe, just like in the picture. They find employment picking fruit, but soon learn that they are earning a decent wage only because they have been hired to break a workers' strike. Tom runs into Jim Cassie, who, after being released from jail, has begun organizing workers in the process. Cassie has made many enemies among the landowners. When the police hunt him down and kill him in Tom's presence, Tom retaliates and kills a police officer. So when Tom witnessed how Cassie died, so he also attacked the police. So Tom killed the attacker using the axe. Next, Tom goes into hiding while the family moves into a boxcar on a cotton farm. One day, Ruthie, the youngest Judd daughter, reveals to a girl in the camp that her brother has killed Tom and is hiding nearby. Fearing for his safety, Majut finds Tom and sends him away. Tom heads off to fulfill Jim's task of organizing the migrant workers. So the end of the cotton season means the end of work. A word sweeps across the land that there are no jobs to be had for 3 months. 3 months. So rain set in and flood the land. Rose of Sharon gives birth to a stillborn child. So the Tom Judds hide and live, and his family live, finding a boxcar to use as their new camp. So the river floods them out, and Rose of Sharon's babies stillborn. They then leave for dry shelter. Next, Ma, desperate to get her family to safety from the floods, leads them to a dry barn not far away. Here they find a young boy kneeling over his father, who is slowly starving to death. He has not eaten for days, giving whatever food he had to his son. Realizing that Rose of Sharon is not producing milk, Ma sends the others outside so that her daughter can nurse the dying man. So the family finds an abandoned barn where they saw a man starving himself to feed his son. That's why Rose of Sharon breastfeeds the starving man to survive. So next is the styles of the author. So first is man versus self. For Tom, um, suffered internally, for he just gotten out from prison of killing a man in self-defense, and part of his parole, he is not allowed to leave the state. But Tom Judd chose to go to his family in California and tried to stay away from trouble. So he decided to break his parole even if it could mean more time in prison. So next is man versus society. Um, Man versus Society, in which another big trouble from this novel is tied to social class during the Great Depression of Dust Bowl. So the wealthy thrive off the backs of the desperate working man. Another from the Man versus Society is that same struggle occurs with the wealthy landowners. In California, it is stated there how removed landowners are from the plight of the working class. Um, they blame the economy on labor unions and higher taxes rather than realizing that a million of hungry people were um, were the reason that unions and taxes were needed. So that is for the conflict. Next is flashbacks. So Tom remembers Cassie as the preacher who baptized him, but now Cassie has lost the spirit. So, as what I have said, Jim Cassie is ex-reverend. So, and now he lost the spirit and his faith. So Cassie goes with Tom to the Jude property only to find it deserted. So there they met Molly Graves, who is hiding out. So in a flashback, Molly Graves Tom describes to Tom and Cassie how farmers all over the area were forced from their farms, including Jude's clan, by the deed holders of the land, and had their house knocked down by caterpillar tractors. That is for the flashback. And for the foreshadowing, so first is many tragedies in the book serve to foreshadow future sorrows. So the reports of men returning in despair from California are sources of sadness in themselves, but they also seem to bode ill for the future. Moreover, books Jude focus chapters often serve to foreshadow tragedy. So, so the novel or the book served to foreshadow future sorrows, sources of sadness and ill for the future, and also serve to foreshadow tragedy. So at many points they portray hardships facing the migrants at large, which the Judds then encounter in the following chapters. So that is for foreshadowing. Next is the themes. So first we have the man in humanity to man. So his story represents the depression and the Dust Bowl as causes of human suffering. So the fact that the suffering of migrants was largely caused by the actions of other human beings. That is for man's inhumanity to man. Then next, the saving power of family and fellowship. So through the journey of Jude's family, they value uh, their commitment to each other above money, foods, and all else. While traveling, they extended their kinship. And in this novel, at the end of this novel, Tom Jude realizes that all people are his people. Next is the dignity and strength of the human spirit. So the book describes the difficulties that the Judes face throughout their journey, but their constant perseverance shows how strong a person can be in the face of adversity. So that is for the themes. Next is the cultural implication. So, the image of grapes growing in the promised land of California, to which many migrants turned as their last hopeful dream. Then, unfortunately, California, though in some ways better than the devastated land and foreclosed homes these people left behind, was far from a promised land. Most of the workers were exploited by the farm's owners, who in turn suffered. So that is their hardships at the hands of large corporations. One issue Stenbeck's novel helped bring to light is the flawed system of growing and distribution present in 1930s America. Then, the poverty and hunger of men and their families forced many to work for pennies on an empty stomach just to survive. Imagine how difficult the life they experience before, because of the selfishness of other people. Next is the implication of the title. So at this point in the story, the grape is solely representative of all that is good, new, and pure in their journey, and the hope that lies ahead. Before their dreams are lost, this their stronghold and what keeps them pressing in their trip. Because of the destitute trip involved in getting to California, the rat aspect of the title is also accurate. This, however, is different from the grapes. Rat represents the actuality of the journey, not the dream as the grapes do. Rat definitely means violent, resentful anger, rage, and fury. And this definition relates to the struggle in the story well. So the grapes represent the dreams of the characters end up being what hurts them the most. They have enduring wills to carry on because of their hopes, which ultimately, because they end up apart, hurt, or desolate, is what has hurt them the most. Because of their need for success and the will to gain, they will not give into the fact that they have failed. And that is the story of the grapes of wrath. So that's all. Thank you. I hope you learned something about the novel. Thank you and God bless.